Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and today is hot takes time. I'm going to react to your witchy hot takes again. It has been a couple of months, maybe even over a year since part 1. If you want to watch that or rewatch it, then you can check that out up here. But today we are going to be doing this again. I asked for your anonymous hot takes and I'm going to be reacting to them. We are maybe going to be disrupted by a little cat because we're fostering a stray right now. And she is a very playful, kinda loud, at times kinda loud, young kitty. So it's possible that you meet her, maybe. Charlie! Come here! Maybe I can introduce you. Charlie! Hello! This is Charlie. She's a very cutesy stray from around my area. She just came up to us and was like, hello, I need some help. We first thought she was pregnant. Then we thought she was a boy. And then it turns out she is actually, in fact, a girl, and she just had like hormone imbalance problems, so she had a lot of stuff on her belly. That's why we thought that she was either pregnant or had huge tumors. Luckily, neither was the case, and now after being spayed, she's completely fine. And I was actually interrupted by her for the first time already, so this will be interesting to be filming with her, but my room is the only room where we have space for another cat. But without further ado, get yourself a drink or a snack or something. You can easily use this video as a podcast because visually there won't be a lot happening. But let's get into your hot takes. Okay, first one. Witchcraft is political and I don't understand how people can say that it's not. I agree with that. Honestly, I also don't understand how people can say it's not political. I also don't understand how people can request, and I've seen that, people requesting from content creators online, like witchcraft content creators, to keep politics out of their content. I don't know how you can do that. Witchcraft, like literally, witchcraft was always political. Have you seen the witch hunts? That was very much political. Witchcraft was always political. Witchcraft will always be political. And honestly, if you request from a content creator that they keep their content politics free, no thank you. And if you're actually requesting that, that shows just a lot of privilege. Like, for someone to actually have the guts to request from someone else to keep politics out of stuff, that shows that they have a lot of privilege, that the current political situation doesn't really do them any harm. And I mean, that's nice for you. But there's a lot of us that don't have that privilege to be able to just be apolitical. Like, a lot of us are harmed by the current political situation. So just don't request us to stay apolitical. That's stupid. So I for sure fucking agree. And I have cat hair on my mouth. You won't be able to do every single divination method, and that's okay. Putting other people down or saying their form of divination is unreliable just because it doesn't work for you should be behavior that is not tolerated. Okay, I also really agree with that. I've actually never seen that though. Luckily, I've never seen anyone kind of put down other kinds of divination, and I've also never seen anyone tell anyone else that their divination method is shit or that it doesn't work or anything like that. Luckily, because I would get very mad by that. Honestly, there are so many divination methods and there is validity to all of them. There is a reason why people have used all of them and why they have survived up until now. And there is a reason why people use a specific divination method and they won't use it because it is unreliable. That just doesn't make sense. If someone uses a divination method and it's consistently giving them just wrong and unreliable information, they for sure won't continue using it. So apparently for the person using that divination tool or method, it is working. So just because it's not working for you, doesn't mean it's not working for anyone else, because people are different and tools and methods are different, and that makes things fun. I have methods that don't really work for me. And other people probably won't be able to, I don't know, work with the runes, for example. I know a lot of people don't jive with runes. I also know a lot of people don't really like working with tarot because it's too analytical. But there are also a lot of people who really dislike scrying. So just because you can't do it doesn't mean that it's the method or the tool's fault. She's such a playful cat. We have just like 6-year-olds apart from her, and she's like so playful. I'm not used to that anymore, and she's like, she was a stray, so she's used to hunting. And that's very obvious because she likes to hunt. Woo! Can you just chill for a moment, please? I need to film a video. People need to do more research into their practice to stop stealing from indigenous cultures, especially the American indigenous people's culture. That white sage you have was stolen from native people and now is being sold without their consent, breaking a literal treaty. Okay, again, I won't be getting more into the white sage stuff because I've said a lot of it already in the last video, but in general, the stealing from indigenous cultures and from other closed practices, yeah. I think we are kind of finally getting ahead in the witchcraft community about spreading the word that you should respect closed practices and that you shouldn't just blindly take practices that are closed and use them. So I think that's great because we are definitely far, far ahead of like new age spirituality, esoterica, anything like that. It's way worse there, but we still have that problem. I agree, people should do more research. I don't really know what it is about people just feeling the need to look for spirituality and magical practices outside of their culture. I'm not saying you have to stick with your culture, not at all. But I don't really know why we are trying to look outside for spirituality and magic, because there is spirituality and magic in every single culture. You just have to kind of look for it, you have to research it. Maybe it's too much work for people, maybe that is why, but I just see that a lot, especially people getting into Eastern philosophies and religions. But there is stuff in every single culture. Just because right now your country is Christian doesn't mean that your entire culture is Christian. You just have to dig a little deeper. So I definitely agree that people should do more research into their own practice. And yeah, I think the stealing from indigenous cultures and from closed practices, that is wrong. I think we probably all agree with that, although I still get some comments saying things like, there isn't any closed practices shouldn't be a thing, we should all be sharing. Yeah, that again sounds a lot like privilege. And a lot of times it's white people saying that. I don't like saying that, but a lot of the times these comments are from white people. As much as I would like to think that in the witchcraft community we all agree that closed practices should be respected, that's probably not the truth. That's probably just my nice little bubble that I'm in. Oh, witchcraft is inherently a religious practice. It doesn't need to be theistic, but it is a votive religious practice. And ignoring this denies witches the protections and freedoms given to other religious groups. This will be a hot take because I think this just depends on so many different definitions. This, first of all, depends on your definition of a religion. A lot of people's definition of a religion is an organized religion or a religion that includes like deities and things like that. So people have different definitions of what a religion is. And for a lot of people, for example, just because a lot of witches are animists, for example, I personally think that animism is a deep-rooted and important part of witchcraft, and that spirit work is an inherent part of witchcraft. That already is a hot take, I know that. That ruffles a lot of feathers, but I don't think, for example, that animism or in general believing in spirits and working with spirits is religious. So I personally would not say witchcraft is a religion. I would say there are witchcraft religions, but I wouldn't say that witchcraft per se is religious. And I think a lot of people would also say that witchcraft isn't religious. But again, that is because that depends on what your personal definition of religion is. And also it depends on what your personal definition of witchcraft is, because there are so many different definitions of what witchcraft is already. I think people will never agree on all of these things. Everyone just has their different definitions. So I think this is a very tricky one. Oh, people need to stop saying that something is a general practice or something that all witches do/believe when they are actually referring to Wiccan practice. I would even agree with that if you cut out the Wiccan part. Even just the definition of what witchcraft is and what a witch is varies so heavily that you just can't say that every single witch does this and that. You can't even say that every single witch works with energies, for example, because there are people who define themselves or see themselves as witches or witchcraft practitioners that don't work with that energy model. If you yourself, you're coming from your own standpoint and you say, okay, for me, witchcraft only is working with energies, and if you don't work with energies, you're not a witch. Then of course, from your own standpoint and opinion, you could say every single witch works with energies, but if you're just looking at every single person who calls themselves a witch or who says of themselves that they practice witchcraft, then not even that will be correct. But yeah, with Wiccan practices, that's even worse. I mean, maybe like 40 years ago, that might have been correct, because basically all information that was out there was Wiccan. But nowadays, that is really not the case anymore. I kind of feel like nowadays, when beginners get into witchcraft, they don't really go this route of starting out as a Wiccan and then figuring out that Wicca is a religion and that they don't really want that. They only want the witchcraft part. I feel like nowadays when beginners get into witchcraft, they just start right away just with witchcraft and they completely stay away from the Wiccan part, especially because there's so much Wicca bashing at the moment. Even just a couple of years ago, it might have actually been correct that the majority of witches practices a lot of typically Wiccan practices, because most people would have started with Wicca and then would have gone from there to just witchcraft. But nowadays I kind of feel like that's not even that is the case anymore. So yeah, definitely agreed. I would say though that a lot of people equate Wicca and modern witchcraft practices. A lot of people, for example, think, oh yeah, Wicca, oh yeah, that is like candle spells and crystals and green magic and things like that. A lot of people don't really know what Wicca actually is, like actual traditional Wicca, what that is actually about. A lot of people just see this 2000s, 2010s maybe Wicca. That is actually just, how do I say this, a pretty new agey modern witchcraft that was kind of put under the label of Wicca because everyone just called themselves Wiccan. But those practices themselves aren't actually Wicca. They are not Wiccan practices. They're separate from Wicca. Like Wicca inherently doesn't have anything to do with crystals. Wicca in itself doesn't have anything to do with white sage. A lot of people really conflate these appropriative practices, like working with white sage, for example, with Wicca, simply because a lot of witches that during that time called themselves Wiccan, because everybody just used the terms Wicca and witchcraft synonymously. A lot of people called themselves Wiccan that weren't actually Wiccan. They weren't really practicing Wicca at all, but they called themselves Wiccan and they appropriated those practices. And that's why nowadays a lot of people kind of like looking back say that Wicca is appropriative, but those two don't really go together. You have to actually look at what actual traditional Wicca is. And that doesn't have anything to do with white sage or like crystal or these typical more love and light witchcraft practices. Don't inherently necessarily have to do anything with Wicca. But I honestly just really dislike this Wicca bashing, because a lot of people who do engage in this Wicca bashing don't have any clue about what actual traditional Wicca really is, and they just think that these modern, more woo-woo, new agey spiritual practices that people called Wicca is Wicca, but it isn't. Just because you run a group of like-minded people, post a lot of AI bullshit about being a good leader, and have self-proclaimed yourself as an expert, does not mean that I or anyone with any awareness look to you as the end-all be-all pagan authority. A bunch of videos does not a pagan make. That is very true, and that's why discernment in online spaces is very, very important, especially now with all of the AI content out there. There's not even just AI online content, there's AI books that people just slap their name on and publish it. So you have to be very, very careful whom you follow and who you trust and who you believe in. And I include myself on that because, yeah, sure, I am putting out content that I think is correct and I try to do my research and be authentic, but, oh, and I don't post AI content, but still I might be putting out misinformation from time to time because people make mistakes. So you always, like, you should never blindly trust anyone online. You should always cross-reference anything, even just stuff that you read in a book, because let's be honest, in the witchcraft or more wider magical publishing sphere, editing might be editing like grammar and things, but not like too much when it comes to content. And that is pretty obvious if you know quite a lot about a topic and you read a book and it's full of mistakes. So, well, next up. Hello, Charlie! Making witchcraft your whole personality feels disingenuous if you're not actually practicing often. I mean, that already comes down to you shouldn't make witchcraft your whole entire personality. You in general shouldn't make something in general your whole entire personality, because people are faceted beings. We have usually more than one interest. I know with like hyper-focus interests and things like that, it gets a little bit complicated because in the moment it might feel like it's your only personality trait and the only thing you want to do. But even if you are currently in a hyper-focus on witchcraft, there's still more to you than that hyper-focus. People are, again, faceted beings. There's always more to your personality than witchcraft. Even though it might feel like it is your whole entire being, I understand that because it is a big part of me. There's still more to us, even though it takes up a lot of room in our life. Because let's be honest, if you are a witch, it does take up a lot of space in your life. Even if you are not constantly casting spells, for example, it will still take up a lot of your thoughts and a lot of your life, and you will be living life differently than someone who's not a witch. Let's just say it like that. ChatGPT is so dangerous for baby witches that don't know what they're messing with yet. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think everybody knows this. At least I hope so. Because have you seen how much those AI chatbots hallucinate? You might be able to do something with it, but especially just blindly asking ChatGPT for a spell or something, very bad idea. Very bad idea, because it doesn't care about close practices and it doesn't care about what culture you're from or what you're practicing. It doesn't really care about anything like that. It just blindly copies what it sees online. And if we know one thing, then that is that there's a lot of bullshit online. So of course, those chatbots, they just replicate that bullshit. So I just hope that that's not even a hot take. I hope that people widely agree that they shouldn't blindly trust a chatbot. Oh, I find witch degrees, like sorting witches into categories based on how much they learned, ridiculous. Of course, it's a different thing in organized communities like Wicca, but in my opinion, if you're a witch, you're a witch. I actually agree with that, especially because people will never be able to agree on what you have to have learned or achieved to be able to call yourself advanced. What levels would you even implement? Like, I know for sure, like, you could call yourself a beginner because you can track that by time, but even then, if you've practiced for 2 years, are you still a beginner? It always depends on how much you're practicing, how much you've researched. Someone can still be a beginner after 10 years. So it's always just very, very subjective. You're just a witch and you never cease to learn as a witch. And if you do, you're doing something wrong. Because there's always more to learn and more to experience, because in the end, you're learning most from your own experiences. If you're not learning anything new, that means you're not making any new experiences, and that means you're probably not practicing. People be calling anything witchcraft just so they can call themselves a witch and completely disregard the history, meaning and folklore behind witchcraft. Like, know that whitewashed yoga or crystal essential oil healing stuff is not witchcraft. Yeah, there is a lot of, there is in general a lot of discourse about what witchcraft is and what makes a witch. And there are people who think or believe that witchcraft is an umbrella term for any magical practice. And I so harshly disagree with that. But those are usually the people who are like, oh yeah, everybody who practices any kind of magical practice is a witch. I disagree with that. In my opinion, there's the umbrella of magical practices, and then witchcraft is one part of that. But witchcraft is not every single kind of magical practice. Just because you do some kind of magical practice doesn't make you a witch. For example, someone who might be very, very into like Western ceremonial magic would probably not call themselves a witch. They are a magical practitioner, but they are not a witch. And that's totally fine. So in my opinion, yes, not everyone is a witch and not everyone is practicing witchcraft. And that doesn't make it worse. I kind of feel like a lot of people who get mad when you describe what you think witchcraft is and it doesn't align with their views. A lot of those people kind of feel like being able to call yourself a witch makes you kind of better in some way. And I don't really get that. Like, witchcraft is not a better or cooler magical practice than any of the other magical practices. I don't know why people are so hell-bent on being able to call themselves a witch. It's not cooler than being an occultist. It's not cooler than being a chaos magician. It's not cooler than being a ceremonial magician. It's not. It's just different, but it's not better or cooler. So why are people getting heated when someone else has a different opinion on what witchcraft is than them? Yeah, I could talk about that for ages because people get so heated about it, and in the end, it doesn't fucking matter if you want to call yourself a witch. Nobody can really tell you not to. And just because someone who puts out videos online tells you that their opinion on what witchcraft is differs from yours, that does not invalidate your practice, because in the end, witch and witchcraft is just labels. And you do what you do, and if you think that's witchcraft, then go on with that. Just because someone online says that according to their beliefs, you are not a witch, that doesn't make you a worse practitioner, that doesn't make you less cool, that doesn't make your practice invalid, nothing like that. But yeah, for some reason, people start calling themselves witch just because they do something, just because they collect crystals, or just because they journal, or just because they do tarot, for example. I know now a lot of online creators who are into like all of this whimsical stuff, and they journal and they like reading fantasy books and stuff, and then they call themselves a witch, and they throw around words like, oh yeah, I'm meeting up with my witch coven, and then in the end what they do is they read together and they journal. That's not witchcraft. So I kind of think that's even worse than someone who at least on some level does some kind of spiritual practice, but like just like journaling, not really witchcraft. So yeah, it's being used a lot, but this will always be a heated topic because we will never will we all agree on what a witch is and what witchcraft is. You should have a very good understanding of the runes if you intend to use them in spell work. I've seen quite a lot of new age witches just throwing them in their spells without knowing anything about them beyond what they saw on a random Pinterest post. I agree so much. We even see that in the sagas, what happens if you use runes willy-nilly and you don't know what you're doing. You will make things way worse. I don't want to fearmonger here. It's not like you have to write a master's thesis on runes to be able to work with the runes, but you should at least have a decent understanding on what the runes mean. And if you look back like maybe 20 years, like maybe 10, 20 years ago into like general witchcraft books, and you have a lot of general witchcraft books that have like a runes section, and it is so fucking short, and it gives you like one correspondence for each rune, and that's about it. It doesn't go into the history or the culture or anything like that that revolves around runes that is important to be able to understand them. And if you look at those older witchcraft books and you have these tiny sections on the runes, and you think that people were actually using those and just going with it, probably not the best idea. In general, if you don't understand a symbol that you're using, don't use it. If you want to use a symbol and you can't find one that you truly understand, make your own sigil. but don't just use symbols that you don't understand the meaning of. As a non-Wiccan, I've noticed people's irritation towards Wicca pushing others away from the witchcraft community. I don't agree with a lot of Wicca, but still want to make room for Wicca and the people that practice it. I don't want anyone to feel like they can't practice what they feel is right. Yeah, and that is what I mean with the Wicca bashing. There is so much Wicca bashing by people that don't have a single clue what Wicca actually is. They have probably never read a proper book on traditional Wicca, so they have no clue what Wicca actually is and which practices are actually Wicca and which aren't. To be able to criticize Wicca, you would have to actually do your proper research to know what you're even talking about, and most people don't even do that. If you've tried it and you actually know what it entails, of course you can dislike it. You don't have to like everything. But you don't have to go online and start bashing every single Wiccan out there. But honestly, I kind of feel like that's just in general a people problem. People just want to be mad about something, and if they can't find anything, they will make shit up. So yeah, in my opinion, Wicca has its validity, and every single kind of modern witchcraft practitioner should be so thankful and so grateful for the fact that Wicca exists. Because if Wicca hadn't existed, we all probably wouldn't be here. Because I personally think that if Wicca hadn't existed and Wicca hadn't been there to kind of market witchcraft and magical practices in general as not scary, like if Wicca hadn't been there to pave the way, it would have never gained popularity as much as it had, and most of us probably nowadays would not be magical practitioners or witches. So a lot of people should pick up a history book. Most people who say they are part of a close practice or a generational witch family are lying. These are exceptionally rare. People just want to seem interesting, unique, and important. I mean, I wouldn't know because I don't know the people personally, so I wouldn't be able to say if that's true or not. But I definitely think that a lot of people try to make themselves seem greater. And how can you make yourself seem greater? If you kind of fabricate the story, this origin story about how you became a witch. I kind of see that in a lot of interviews also, where people are asked like, how did you get into witchcraft? And then people start telling stories about how they made potions as children, or how they played in the forest and that made them a witch, or that paved the way for them to be witches. No, it doesn't. Just because you made potions as a child, that doesn't make you a witch. And just because you liked being in nature as a child, like a 4-year-old, doesn't make you a witch. I kind of always feel like that is a little bit, I don't know, a little bit ridiculous. I mean, sure, it's a cute story, but that for sure doesn't have anything to do with witchcraft. I mean, it's always cooler to be able to say, oh yeah, I was already interested in it as a child, than saying, oh, I found this book at the bookstore about witchcraft and I read it and I thought it was cool, or I saw this video online about Wicca and I thought it was cool, so I did more research and got into it. Of course that's cooler to say, you know, than picking it up from a book or a video or a documentary or something like that. But we don't have to make up cool origin stories. In most cases they are kind of ridiculous. And not to say that that's the case for everyone, because I know there are people who actually are from witchcraft practicing families. I know there are actually people who saw spirits when they were children, for example, and that got them interested. I know there are actually people who had like supernatural experiences and things as children, and that's different. I don't mean that. What I mean is people who just did children things as children, like playing outside, playing in the mud, playing with sticks, using them as wands, making mud potions and things like that, just children things. Trying to fabricate like a witchcraft origin story out of that, I think that's a little bit, that's taking it a little bit too far. All right, after my camera has cut me off twice already now, I think that is where I will leave it for today. Tell me in the comments if you want a part 3. I always really like discussing your hot takes. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so that you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Make sure to check out my Instagram to see more of my day-to-day life. And if you want to support this channel, then please check out my Patreon and my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!